Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Welcome, everybody, to Fantasy Football Tonight. I'm your host, Todd the True Guru Farino, and I should be joined shortly, of course, by RC Rizza as we get the countdown to the NFL 2012 season. This is pretty much going to be our last show, obviously, before we turn into next week, and then not the last show of the season. This is our last preseason show. As we get into next week, we will be getting into, bench start questions and handling who to start, what's going on. You can't wait to see the final cuts coming up, obviously, sooner than later. There's a few more preseason games still got to go through, obviously, but after those, we're going to see all the final cuts, see what these NFL rosters are going to shape up and look like, and see what I'm sure there's going to be some surprises in that, as there always is. But we're going to be talking about that today. We also had me and RC participated in 2 expert drafts this weekend. This past week on Monday, we were in the Mike Wars League, which, of course, is hosted by Roto Experts, and Dave Garwan over there does a great job of it. Great draft. We'll tell you about some of the participants that were in it. But the Mike Wars League is what it sounds like. It's for podcasters and radio hosts get together and go at it with each other, and so that's Mike Wars. Then, of course, we had the Fantasy Football Fetch Expert League, the 6th year of it, and 5th or 6th year. I believe it is 5th year. I don't want to tell you fibs. And that was a great draft as well. That's the draft that's hosted by myself, and I haven't won that. I don't think I've ever won that league, so I would like to win it once, so I'm going to try this year to win it. Both drafts were just brutal. I have to tell you, both drafts were brutal. I think I did a lot better in the Mike Wars draft than I did in the Fantasy Football Fetch draft. But we'll talk about that, see what you can get away with. And, I mean, when you're drafting against people who know what they're doing and know who they want, it's a different story than as opposed to drafting against people who basically look at the top 20 on the ADP and pick out of that. These are the real deal type of drafts. Anyhow, we'll get to that in a second. But first of all, let's get over to fantasyfeud.com. If you guys haven't signed up for the Week 1 NFL free roll, join me and do that. I'm going to be playing in there. They're going to be handing out $2,500 worth of prizes, and this is going to be your opportunity every week. I mean, they have the $2,500 Week 1 free roll. After that, it's going to be different prizes, but they'll always be free, and you can play me, yours truly, Todd the True Guru Farino, and see if you can beat me. And the great thing about fantasyfeud.com is, if you do poorly Week 1, just push it aside, throw a splash of water in your face and get ready for Week 2. This is not like if you have a bad draft or you take a few injuries and you're kind of done for the season, Week 3. At fantasyfeud.com, you can play every week, daily. The daily contest. They say daily, but what they really mean is weekly, because obviously football is not daily. But basically, you can go in there each week, pick a lineup out of their system and roll with it and see if you can beat the other participants. Now, there's going to be hundreds of participants in this free roll, but there's $2,500 of prizes, and they're giving away plenty of them. It's not like it's just all to one place, all to second place, whatever. There's going to be tons of prizes depending on the number of total people that get in there, but there'll be plenty. And in order to get in there, the best way to do it is go to fantasyfootballfetch.com or fantasyfootballtonight.com. Click on one of the Fantasy Feud banners. It's going to take you right to the sign-up page for the free roll, and sign up with the password FREENFL. That's right, FREENFL. There's your password. That'll let them know that you're in the crew with me, and you can take on Todd the True Guru Farino. And each week I will announce I don't think I'm going to announce everybody's going to beat me. I naturally assume not too many will. But I will announce the listeners who do actually beat me and probably pick on you a little bit. That's what I do best, because I got the mic. And I always say that to prime time when we're at the drafts. I always say prime time, don't talk too much smack in the draft room. Remember, I got the mic. And by the way, RC, it looks like prime time's going to be cutting Terrell Owens here pretty quickly. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on?
Nothing much. I'm sure you got plenty of news for us to get to, but today, on today's docket, we were going to kind of try to cover the drafts that we did, and I'm going to let you choose which draft you would like to cover, and basically, I'm not 100% sure how much time we're going to have to cover the whole draft. We never get enough time to cover an entire draft, but maybe we'll just cover our teams and take a look at some of the other surprising picks. But anyways, I was picking on primetime a little bit. Do you remember he took Terrell Owens in 2 drafts, and I think he has to find a home for him now, doesn't he?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering what was going on with that, but well, who knows? I mean, he could catch on with another, maybe Canadian team or whatever is going on with him, and he can salvage the season. Obviously, it doesn't look likely, but and the other thing is that there's a lot of people drafting Randy Moss too, and that makes as little sense. For maybe he's not in the same kind of physical shape, maybe a little better, a little worse, but certainly they both fit the category of washed-up receivers that you just don't want to touch in fantasy drafts this year. And especially given Moss's situation where he's just in a very non-prolific offense where even if he was in very good shape, he probably wasn't going to get thrown to very often. So it's just stay away from those guys.
I don't even understand it, and it's not like it was just prime time taken. In one draft, I think one of our Blog Talk leagues, I believe he took both Moss and Owens. I mean, I think he's trying to, reach a little bit and try to find a little bit of past sparkle, getting two, obviously in their heyday, stud wide receivers and hoping that maybe something magical will happen. But it's not going to happen. But it's not just him. In both of our expert drafts this weekend, Randy Moss was drafted. I think Greg Kellogg drafted him. And Greg Kellogg believes, and he's obviously not only one of the nicer guys in fantasy football, so he's easy to pick on because he's so nice, but he's also one of the smartest guys. But I think he, again, I think you're gambling. I think it's just a simple gamble. It's not like they're taking him that early. I mean, it's a pretty late pick, so who cares at that point? But I think they're taking a little gamble saying, listen, I'm going to roll the dice, and if Randy Moss all of a sudden, shows this glorified, season that he has, or 6 games or whatever, well, then it pays off. But the way I looked at it is I went and I got, some deep sleeper picks rather than taking a chance on a Randy Moss. I mean, in fact, Randy Moss was drafted before Mario Manningham was drafted. What do you think about that? In every league, he was drafted before Mario Manningham.
Yeah, and once again, it's just simply name recognition. I imagine. I mean, like you're saying, everyone remembers the glory. I mean, you might as well root for the Little River Band to make a comeback, or Eddie Money. It's like, and if you're going to root for a washed-up receiver, it's like compare say like Marvin Harrison. I mean, because these guys. Moss and Owens, when they're not likable guys to begin with, and not that is the most relevant point, but just stay the freak away from them. It's just that's the moral of the story, and we'll find out why. Well, we already have with Owens, and we'll once the season opens, we'll definitely see why you should have stayed away from him.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's enough talk about Moss and Owens because it's really there's just. I mean, I'd rather have like an Alshon Jeffries than have one of those guys. And there's so many late receivers, even Malcolm Floyd, who, probably won't do that much, but he'll certainly do more damage than a Randy Moss. And we could get burned. And I'll tell you right now, RC, we'll wrap it up on this. If we get burned and all of a sudden Randy Moss goes out and catches 3 touchdowns from Alex Smith, whatever, on, week 1, I'm going to say, okay, you got me. All right, let's see what he does week 2, and let's see if he's still a 49er by week 3. It's just that wild, and it's so wild. And then you just put together a little formula of all the possibilities that can go wrong with the Randall Moss. And I'm going to tell you right now, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. So at least we agree on that, and I didn't have to pull the trigger on the bet.
Has Alex Smith ever thrown 3 touchdowns in a game to 3 separate receivers?
Well, maybe
I'm not
he's done
sure
that.
That's ever happened. What?
I said maybe he's done that.
Okay.
What we'll do is we'll set Lockdown out on that. Lockdown, go find out if Alex Smith has thrown 3 touchdowns in a game. I'm willing to bet he's done it at least once in his NFL career. Lockdown, by the way, is in the chat room again, and again, he's just blindly, picking everybody to beat me every week, and it's cute. I mean, I find it irresistibly adorable. But
you kind of ask for it, because you basically have a very brash, in-your-face attitude, and I mean, but you expect it. Matter of fact, you encourage it.
I do encourage it.
You'd be disappointed if Lockdown didn't do that. I mean, let's be honest. So, you're only one guy to blame, and it's you.
You know what it is? The thing is, I feed off of it. What it does is it really it has me make sure that I'm focused. And I can't let down, because if I let down and I lose a game, I'm going to hear about it. And you know, and we got a guy in the chat room. Let me see if he'll reveal his team name. I think he did up here. His name is the Bears in the chat room. But he's popped in and he's playing me week 1. So what we'll do next week is maybe while we're going through the teams, I'll take a look at some of these matchups and just tell the Bears, as his name in the chat room, how badly I'm going to beat him by. So that's what I'll do. And RC, by the way, Lockdown, since you're not in the chat room, he is saying he loves you. Apparently, he has a love affair with you. Doesn't like me.
Well, I'm sure. Well, that's because I don't pick on anyone. Once again, it's you. And you just encourage it. You're just a hostility magnet.
Listen, I'm the one who has to see. I'm the butter in between you and the chat room. So I have to take the beatings, okay? I don't even know if that means anything. Butter just sounded appropriate. That's what I am, okay? And I have to sit here and listen to what they have to say and take on the smack talk and respond. Dude, him and Primetime were going at it in the chat room, not only in the chat room, but they were also going at it in the draft chat room. So trust me, Primetime's on my side. He has not joined us for this show yet. I hope he's okay, but when he does, we'll have him. Point is Lockdown's going to finish in 12th place. I'm predicting at 12, at best 11th place. So. Okay. I'm kidding. I have no idea. I'm not even predicting that at all. Okay, so let's get to. I want to get to the news items really quickly, but one I want to talk about, because this is people aren't considering this, and I don't even know. You're the genius of the two-man team we have here in the studio, so you have to tell me, how are the replacement refs? They've already announced that the replacement refs are going to be there guaranteed week 1. Very well could be there longer, but at least guaranteed week 1. They're going to have these replacement refs. Now, they have not looked very good so far in the preseason, as they're still training them and working them. But this is going to cause, a little bit of grief for fantasy players, because you're going to see non-calls. You're going to see calls that shouldn't have been called. You might lose a touchdown or 2 in the first week. You might lose receptions, whatever, yards. Do you look at this as a positive from fantasy, like maybe they won't pull as many flags, or do you look at it as a negative for fantasy, that they're really going to screw up?
I see it as by the way, if I'm the genius of this operation, we're in serious trouble. I see it as like a complete non-event, because in one sense, it's like, if these people, what does it take to really be an NFL referee? And whatever the minimum qualifications are, I'm sure they're in better shape. I mean, because there's some of the referees that are older. So they'll be able to keep up with the pace of what's going on, maybe not get run over. But certainly, don't you think, whoever these replacement refs are, they're going to try to be extra prepared. And not only that, you're going to have the safety net of really reviewing the plays, which is unique in football. So if an egregious mistake is made, then, they'll always fall back on that. So I see it as a complete non-event.
I'm going to see it as an actual good thing for fantasy football. I think that, they're going to, I think they're going to do an all right job. I mean, there's going to be missed calls, yeah. Are there going to be a few more missed calls than the normal? Sure. I mean, it's not like the veteran referees don't miss them. But I think they're going to be a little bit more hands-off, particularly when it comes to the wide receiver cornerback battles. There's always a lot of battles, touch and go there. I don't see week 1, and I'm willing to bet you on this. I don't see a lot of pass interference called down, unless they're blatant. Obviously, a blatant one will be called. But, there's always that little scuffle between the cornerback and the receiver that goes on, and sometimes it's just, hey, we're going to let them play their football, particularly down in the end zone area. But I think you're going to see a lot less of those called, so I can see a little uptick in receiver points this week, and I firmly know that the offensive coordinators and all the NFL teams are going to be aware of that. They're going to say, listen, we got these guys out there. It's going to be their first week in the NFL, calling games. They're not going to want to call that pass interference call that would just BS and get riddled for it on ESPN and NFL Network. So they're going to be a little bit cautious before they go throwing it. I also think you're going to see a lot less hold calls on the offensive line. So I think you're going to see some pretty good offensive games in the first week and for the weeks to follow if they stay in. But anyways, just wanted to bring that up. And by the way, my Cowboys are currently down 6-0 to the Miami Dolphins. Thank God for preseason, right, RC?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. So
No, it's a non-starter.
Yeah, one thing I noticed, and I don't know if I'm completely wrong about this, because I usually wait maybe a little too long to pick a first defense, but I'm kind of optimistic about the Cowboys' defense. Am I wrong about that, or are they going to suck fantasy-wise, or what do you think?
Well, no, the Cowboys' defense is actually a sleeper defense of mine. I haven't been able to get them except for in one of my drafts because there's better defenses than taking a sleeper defense. But the thing that I love about the Dallas Cowboy defense is if you notice what their strength is, if you look at the Dallas Cowboys' strength, it's their line. I mean, they have DeMarcus Ware out there. They have Anthony Spencer. I mean, they have a well-built, they have that 3-4 defense going on there, and they even have, Kenyon Coleman in there is pretty solid. And then they have Sean Lee, who really fell into one of those middle linebacker slots. And last year he had the cast when he broke his wrist or damaged his wrist on Michael Vick's helmet. But before then, he was intercepting balls left and right and really chasing down quarterbacks. Not a lot of stats in the box, but doing a lot of good for the defense. Their poorness on defense last year, where they were horrible, was their secondary. Well, they improved that this year. This year they brought in Brandon Carr. They have their number 1 draft pick in Morris Claiborne. They still have Scandrick, who is pretty solid. They still have Mike Jenkins, who is very good, really the best cornerback for the Cowboys last year. But they're still a little soft at, I would be worried about their safeties, Barry Church and Sensabaugh, but they improved the cornerback situation is the key here. They have what I think are 4 very good cornerbacks. They have really 2 Pro Bowl potential cornerbacks. And once you've now shut that part of the field down, and the quarterbacks can't just, get away with murder thrown to their wideouts, that's going to give Anthony Spencer and DeMarcus Ware a lot more time to get around the corners and blow through some holes and get some sacks. I think the Cowboys are going to be a fantastic defense this year, and you should draft them if you have that chance.
Okay, fair enough.
By the way, I'm still waiting again on our friend Hattie in your draft. That draft has taken forever, by the way. I just wanted to note that. I want to call Hattie out on the show in our email draft.
Yeah,
no,
well,
then
we should finish by September 5th, so we should be all right.
We should be okay. I'll finish much earlier than that because I don't have the last 2 picks, so I'll be done in. I think I got 1 more draft pick and I'm done.
Yeah. I think we're in the last 2 rounds of that one. So you want to talk about some news items?
Let's go to news.
Okay. So the Seahawks receiver situation is, pretty much in flux as it has been all preseason. It looks like Sidney Rice, he, even though they declared him ready to play, there's still some lingering doubts about, his, he had shoulder surgeries and he also has a little bit of a history of concussions. So you have to be careful with Sidney Rice. I noticed that he's been lasting in some drafts well past the 11th, 12th round, and, it's kind of surprising to see him out there. But I think you brought up one week, it may be, I'm a little bit too apologetic of him. I guess I remember that one great season, and one thing about Sidney Rice, he has really, he's not really a speedster, but he's got some of the best hands of any receivers in the league. So, but when you look at, like you brought up, when you look at like what he's actually done in his career, he's only had that one stellar year, and then the rest of them have been injury plagued or whatever was going on. So it's probably right to just hold off on him. Plus, we're not even sure Sidney Rice at full health exactly what's going to go on, because once again, this is a Pete Carroll team, and he is really the master of mystery. And then Doug Baldwin, he's been struggling with a hamstring problem, but they're saying that he should be ready for week 1. So he might be a little bit safe for the draft, but I notice everyone's staying away from him too. Remember, even though they dropped Terrell Owens, they still have Braylon Edwards hanging around. And then, of course, Golden Tate, which it looks like Golden Tate is behind Braylon Edwards at the moment. So this could be a situation to just, stay completely clear of. What do you think?
Yeah, the Seattle, Seattle's going to be an interesting team. They always are interesting. I mean, they have they have the powerhouse running back that as long as he stays out of trouble should be effective. They have a strong defense. I mean, I notice a lot of people are drafting Seattle fairly high. I mean, I got them in one league and I got them pretty low, and it was after all my other defenses were taken, so it's kind of why I went with them. So otherwise, what I'm trying to say is I'm still unsure of what their defense can be able to produce this year. But then they have this wild card offense that you just now mentioned, where they have all of these receivers. They're going with the rookie quarterback in Wilson, so it's going to be kind of interesting to see what they're going to do. I mean, no one's expecting this team with Pete Carroll to make the playoffs, but they could. But no one's expecting it. So there's not a lot of pressure on it. But when you look at it, you look at Golden Tate, he's going to be starting on one side. He's going to be starting alongside of Sidney Rice, and if he's not healthy, you're probably going to see, Obamanu in there, or of course Baldwin in there. But then of course there's the Braylon Edwards, and I've been reading up on Braylon Edwards because I just personally really like the guy. Just a good guy. And him and Russell Wilson have had, the reason why he beat out Terrell Owens for that job is he just had a good chemistry with him, and they've connecting on routes. And I could see, Pete Carroll putting Braylon Edwards in there to keep his rookie quarterback, contained. I mean, I'd much rather have Sidney Rice and a Braylon Edwards on the sides of me if I was Pete Carroll, on the sides of my quarterback, because they're veteran wide receivers who know how to, at some point, guide a young quarterback, as opposed to Golden Tate or Doug Baldwin. Not that they couldn't handle it either, but just the veteran status. But as far as what I would do with that team is, outside of Marshawn Lynch, I would pretty much steer clear. Even Zach Miller. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get out of it, but, certainly take a guy if you can get him deep. And I know you've gotten Golden Tate in every league we're in, right?
Yeah, I've been, because I think he's a good value. He always falls to like the second to last round, or, in some situations he's not even drafted, and for good reason. I mean, Golden Tate is purely speculative. You're really just going on, there's a lot of receivers with good physical potential, but some of them never realize it, and Golden Tate might be one of those guys. The encouraging word is that it looks like, and part of it was when he came into the league. Remember, he was a second-round pick, so he was up there, and expectations were pretty high. And he had commented that starting jobs were always handed to him, and when he joined the Seahawks, that wasn't the case, and he was resentful of that, and perhaps a little petulant, and because of that, he didn't work as hard as he admittedly should have. And according to him, he's over that and working harder. What the truth is, we'll find out soon enough.
Absolutely. All right, what else you got for us from the news?
So, also with the Seahawks, Marshawn Lynch, it looks like he had a little bit of an issue with his back. It probably shouldn't discourage you from drafting him as you normally would. This was something that happened to him last year too, but he's certainly, I think, a little bit overvalued this year, and certainly if you want to pick up Lynch, and you can get his backup probably 12 rounds later, Robert Turpin, just in case something silly happens. That's probably a good idea.
Yeah, Robert Turpin hasn't actually been going in a lot of drafts, or if he has been, it's been very late, and there's a very good chance that we will see him at some point this season in a starting fashion. Not because I suspect that Marshawn Lynch will get injured. I mean, any running back can get injured, but primarily because, like you said, of his legal problems that he has. I mean, right now he's still going through one. We'll see how that ends up impacting him. But the bottom line is that Marshawn Lynch is Marshawn Lynch. So if you do draft Marshawn Lynch, and you're going to have to draft him most likely in the second round at the very least, you better get Turpin if you're going to go that route. That's an absolute handcuff that you must have.
Probably the two biggest players in the news, of course, are Maurice Jones-Drew, who has not yet appeared in camp and now is in jeopardy of expectedly missing probably 2 games and perhaps more. So Rashad Jennings will look to fill in. He has been very capable when he does fill in, and definitely makes, at this point, a very good running back to add for depth. Even when Jones-Drew comes back, you have to wonder what kind of shape he's going to be in. and how quickly he's going to be able to fit back into to his starting role. So, Jones-Drew, I mean, you still, if you can pick him up, I mean, at this point, obviously when we started, drafting, say like back in June through July and early August, Jones-Drew was going in the late first, second round. Now you've got to drop him, I would say fourth, fifth, and then if you can pick him up there, why not? But I mean, wouldn't you agree? He's too risky to pick much higher than that.
I mean, I would probably take a chance on him. I would say, yeah, like around the fourth round. I mean, people say why. I mean, he's a first round, running back. Why? Well, number one, I don't have a lot of respect for running backs in the NFL, anyways, and I mean that from a fantasy standpoint because of just their injury problems and how inconsistent they can be. Refer to Chris Johnson last year. So that's why I wouldn't really. I'd rather get another player in the second or third round if Jones-Drew kept around, because we know at some point he's probably going to come back and play. Maybe it's week 2, probably not. Maybe it's week 3 or 4, maybe. But it's going to, at some point, he's going to come back and he's going to be, get back into shape, and by some point in the season you'll have Maurice Jones-Drew. I look at it as similar to a Rashard Mendenhall situation, RC, where a lot of people, they've been ignoring the fact that, he was number 1 draft pick, when I say number 1 draft pick, I mean first round pick last year in many drafts. And now he's opening the season, obviously, after having knee surgery at the end of last season. And he was expected to be on the PUP list to start the season. He's already off it. He's doing some, limited training already. And there's a very good chance that he could be back as early as week 4 or 5, but likely won't start until week 6. But, this is a guy who's fallen way far back. I mean, you can get a Mendenhall upwards of the 10th round sometimes. I mean, if there's not a smart person out there like myself who's saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to take a flyer on Mendenhall in the 8th round because this is where I'm starting to draft backup running backs anyways, and if I can get a guy who by week 6 could be starting on my team and have number 1, first round potential on my team by week 6, I'll certainly take that. So I look at, Maurice Jones-Drew in the same fashion, only you're right. I mean, 4th or 5th round, really the 5th round, if he's still sitting out there, absolutely take a flyer on him. It's not going to kill you. But just understand what you're giving up and understand that this is a fight that is not showing any – it's relentless. I mean, the owner of the Jags has no interest in paying him more, and Maurice Jones-Drew has no interest in coming back. And he's asked to be traded, and the GM has turned around and said, no, we're not trading you. So it's going to get nasty before it gets any better. It's not like – with Mike Wallace, who finally, tendered his offer and is back, it's not like one of those situations. So I would just rather just stay away from that problem. And I've always said avoid problems and go for consistency. That's how you win leagues.
The other player that, of course, was a big news item was Mike Wallace, who finally appeared in camp. So we decided to reluctantly sign his, I'm sure, very lucrative 1-year tender, and so now he's got less than 2 weeks to actually learn a new offense because that's what's being installed in Pittsburgh this year. So I kind of think he should be fine. He's too talented to ignore, of course, but you have to move him down a little bit because it might take him 2-3 weeks to really figure things out after his long hiatus, I would imagine. I haven't noticed where he's going lately. I want to say he's dropped all the way, probably like the 3rd, 4th round area.
Wallace?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been going. As a matter of fact, I can tell you right now where he went in the draft that we just had. Mike Wallace went in the 4th round in the Mike Wars draft, and he probably went in similar draft in our Expert League draft.
Okay.
Yeah, even the 5th round in that draft.
The Packers' receiving situation is getting a little bit interesting because, of course, Greg Jennings is struggling with a little bit of a concussion problem. Jordy Nelson seems to be a sure thing. He's going very, very high in draft, and deservingly so. And then after that, it's Donald Driver, who's still hanging around. James Jones evidently is experiencing a little bit of a resurgence. And then my favorite is Randall Cobb. We'll see, what happens with this situation. But it could very well be James Jones that turns out to be the third best receiver on this team. I doubt it's going to be Donald Driver. My favorite's still Randall Cobb. I think he's more talented than Jones. Jones, I think, dropped too many balls last year and really didn't show all that much when he had the opportunity, where Randall Cobb did actually show something a little special. Who do you think is going to be the number 3 guy worth owning?
That's a great question. And I'm on the same page with you with Randall Cobb. I don't think it's going to be the opening of the season. I think Randall Cobb's going to have to develop. I think he's obviously going to be their kick returner and continue to do the returns and be on that side of the ball all season, unless obviously there's some colossal injury. My issue though with Donald Driver is this team and really the entire city of Green Bay is really behind Donald Driver. They just really like him. So they're going to put up with him as long as they can. Is he old? Yes. Is he slowing down? Has he lost a step? Absolutely. But he's still a comfortable target for Aaron Rodgers. So I think for at least the first 4 games of the season, hopefully not much longer than that, he will be that number 3 guy. And but following him, I don't think it's going to be James Jones. And I'll tell you this right now, James Jones, if he would remain consistent, like you said, and not drop the passes and run the good routes that he's supposed to run, he would have had that job locked up. And frankly, he would have had the job locked up over Jordy Nelson years ago. Not years ago, a couple years ago. But he's never shown that. He's always been, not always there, kind of half-assing it around. So my opinion is that Randall Cobb is really in line before James Jones. It might not say that on NFL depth charts, and it might not look that way to start the season, but it's similar to when the Cowboys were, starting Marion Barber, but they would let Felix Jones run the first runs of the game, something like that, when we all know Marion Barber was the starter. It's going to be like that. So definitely Randall Cobb is a very good deep sleeper in any draft, and he's certainly worth taking a flyer on to see what the Packers do with him this year.
A little bit of unexpected turn of events with the number 2 job behind Steven Jackson in St. Louis, where Isaiah Pead was really expected to be the clear heir apparent and the clear number 2 running back behind Jackson this year, and then maybe next year to start taking more. But so far in the early going, Isaiah Pead's a pretty small back. He's maybe if you had to draw like a parallel, maybe like C.J. Spiller, except not as explosive in the open field as C.J. Spiller, but certainly very good lateral movement. But, with many small backs, he has a hard time running between the tackles, and that has shown up so far just in the early going. I mean, we don't know if this is going to extend into the season, but so far he hasn't really done much. There's a guy that the Rams actually drafted in the 7th round, Darrell Richardson, who, although he's the same size as Pead, he has actually impressed. And it's surprising because, this guy lasts all the way to the 7th round. Once again, Darrell Richardson, if you're in like a really deep league and you want to basically just make a lottery pick on a running back, this could be a good guy to take a shot on.
Who are you talking about?
His name is Darrell Richardson.
Oh, Darrell Richardson, okay.
Right, and it's the first time I've heard of him so far this year. I wouldn't doubt if it's the first time you've heard of him as well. But he was a 7th round pick this year, and it looks like, the early plans or the rumor is that Isaiah Pead and Richardson might be sharing time as the number 2 back behind Steven Jackson, at least early in the season.
No, I mean, I've heard of Darrell Richardson because he just got drafted this year by the Rams. I just wasn't sure if you're talking about him or Pete, because I know how much you love Pete. No, it's definitely going to be, when you go out and you draft, first of all, when you go out and you draft multiple running backs in the draft, it can be any running back's, take of the choice. I mean, it's not like, either of them are starting, and it's not like, let's just be fair, Isaiah Pete was not a number 1 draft pick. I mean, normally your number 1 draft pick in the NFL draft, bang, you're going right in, you're starting. I do think that Pete's going to get that back backup slot, no problem. But it's going to be great to keep an eye on everybody in this system, and frankly, the whole Rams system. I mean, it's not just their running backs, but their young wide receivers that they have, in there. It's going to be a season where I think at some point in this season we're going to see Daryl Richardson. We're going to see obviously Isaiah Pete. I mean, I don't see Steven Jackson staying completely healthy. We're going to see Brian Quick. We're going to see. Obviously we're going to. I'm trying to. I'm blanking on his name. We're going to see there's another wide receiver out there. They're one of their young wide receivers that they have out there. Along with, of course, their status quo veteran wide receivers in Smith and Amendola and Gibson. But it's just going to be one of those teams where I think the whole offense is going to play throughout the year. So you're right, absolutely. Daryl Richardson could be a guy that, especially if Steven Jackson gets hurt, and Isaiah Pete either falters or gets hurt himself, he could be one of those guys who can come through and have show off some talent and end up being a starting running back in the NFL. Is it likely? Probably not.
Right.
It's not right now.
I agree, but once again, it's for those deep leagues. I know I've had those situations where it's like I'm actually doing this draft where it's 36 rounds and it's just pure nuttiness. And when you get to that deep, it's like you're trying to pick guys that have at least some semblance of a chance to do anything this year. Kenny Britt was activated from the PUP list. Of course, he's had knee surgeries, and then probably also equally important is that we're probably going to hear about any suspension that might occur by Friday. So we'll have a clearer picture on Kenny Britt by Friday. Meanwhile, I think we both like Kendall Wright. I think regardless of Kenny Britt's situation, Kendall Wright's going to be relevant this year. Gerard Cook is looking very good. He hasn't really made headlines this preseason, but word out of camp is that he's definitely he's been in the league long enough now. He really started out as the raw specimen with a really high upside and very little clue. A little bit like Vernon Davis started out, quite frankly, and not to say that that's going to happen with Gerard Cook, but certainly his physical talent is similar to Vernon Davis, so he's a guy to look out for. You agree?
No, absolutely, yeah. Oh, of course, especially if Kenny Britt has any trouble getting on the field. Anytime you have a number one draft pick, young rookie wide receiver. Listen, you've got to put into place what's going on in down there in Tennessee. They're going to be going in there. They have a very young quarterback. In my opinion, very unproven in Locker. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens down there. But, again, that's another one of those fun teams to watch because they have a great running game. They have a very good young tight end. And now they have, very good wide receivers. And, it's just a matter of what will Locker be able to do with that team. Anyhow, all right. Anything more prudent, or are we going to move on to draft talk?
How about Tim Tebow news? We haven't talked enough about Tim Tebow, I don't think yet. Well, just briefly, it's not really a news. Boo!
I'm just kidding. I love Tim Tebow. I love any Jets we get to talk about is awesome.
It's not really a news flash, and anyone who's been paying at least a remote attention during the preseason it's once again been reiterated that Tim Tebow does really not know how to throw a football. And not to say, I think that diminishes his potential contribution because we saw evidence of that last year. He is a very effective runner, maybe I think one of the 2 or 3 most effective running quarterbacks in the league. If he could ever throw, he'd be extremely dangerous. But he's completed 36% of his passes with no touchdowns and 2 interceptions, so far, behind the Jets' awful offensive line. Sanchez has done a little better, so he's going to be the clear starter. And the word is, if you're thinking about drafting Tebow, once again, for these situations where you're in weird roster leagues with 2 quarterbacks or nutty things like that, the Jets have expressed that they're probably going to run probably about 10% of their plays in some kind of stupid wildcat formation. And that will include Tim Tebow and So, and I would imagine goal line situations as well. So, if I had to guess, if that actually goes according to plan, I mean, Tim Tebow could very possibly rush for 400 or 500 yards and 6 touchdowns this year, and maybe that's worth picking as your number 2 quarterback. I don't know.
We'll see how it plays out. I mean, I certainly think that Tim Tebow is worth looking at. I mean, I really wish they would use him in a different format, like as a tight end or something along those lines, because, I mean, he is a very big guy, and he can definitely drop a shoulder on linebackers, as we saw him do last year in Denver. But putting him in as a second, and I guess if you do have a league where you have 2 quarterbacks, he definitely makes sense as a fill-in option. But, I mean, I think you're going to be playing a real game of risk, and I'm not talking about the Milton Bradley game, if you put in Tim Tebow as your bye-week starter one week, and you just have to, and you hope that he's going to get a couple of run-in touchdowns. I mean, the Jets just seem to be, and I hate to say this, RC, because I know you're a big fan of the Jets, but they just seem to be a little bit of a mess, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better for you.
No, I mean, I'm holding out some hope. I think they finally found a at least stopgap solution for their just terribly porous offensive line, which was really that one guy that they traded to Hunter. They traded to St. Louis for Justin Smith, who basically was a wash because although Justin Smith was like the number 2 overall pick in 2009, he has just been horrible. And has struggled to even stay on the field. So, but they have this guy Austin Howard who they used in the last preseason game, and he was like 100% improvement. So that is it's an overlooked thing, but if you don't have an offensive line that plays at least above average, then your offense is going to be in trouble no matter who you are. So that there is room for hope in that regard. One more thing on Adrian Peterson. He's also a player that I'm sure is being scrutinized very closely. It looks like they're still being tentative with him, but the plan is, of course, for him to play Week 1 against the Jaguars. Once again, they're being cautious. It's not a sure thing, but that is the plan to actually have him on the field for Week 1.
All right, no, I thought that was the plan the whole time, and I suspect that he will be on the field for Week 1. How much he'll play is another question, but he'll be in the field. All right, well, we got to get to the rest of the show now, so let's go ahead and we have a question in the chat room and the question is, I believe it was from the Bears, if I'm not mistaken, but who will back up Darren McFadden? And the guy that I've seen being drafted right now is, I believe, I think it was drafted by the Oakland Raiders last year. He was around a 3rd, 4th round pick, Taiwan Jones. If you looked at him last year, he had limited play last year, obviously with McFadden out, he got in there. I think he had about 16 carries for about 73 yards. I got it right from him. Yes, I have it right, which is not a bad average. But he is definitely right now slotted as their backup. He's the guy people have been drafting late. The Raiders obviously have a slew of young running backs on their team right now. I think actually one veteran there. Who do you see as being the primary backup? Do you agree it's Taiwan Jones, or do you believe that Mike Goodson, one of the veterans, I believe from the Jaguars, old Jaguar guy in there, or is there going to be somebody else coming out of that crew?
Yeah, remember Marcel Reese is also hanging around, so it's going to be if McFadden goes down, and unfortunately that there is a fairly good chance of that, at least him missing a couple games if recent history is any guide. It'll be a mix of Reese, Goodson, but mostly Taiwan Jones. I think the clear handcuff to grab here would be Jones, and he's looked actually very good this preseason. Notably, the last preseason game, I think he had 50 yards on 10 carries. So he would be the guy that you'd want to grab.
Yeah, definitely. And Lockdown's talking about, he's asking Mike Goodson or Taiwan Jones. And I'll tell you right now, I mean, I just don't see, number one, after what the Raiders saw of Jones last year, I think that's what allowed them to pretty much say, Michael Bush, you could take a walk. Goodson's a great fill-in, but he's an older guy, and really that's not the direction that the Oakland Raiders are going into. He's a good stopgap, and he's certainly a good guy to have on your roster. But I think that, unless Taiwan Jones fails, Goodson is not going to get in there. at the running back slot, to back up McFadden, to be the primary backup. And I think we're going to see plenty of Tywan Jones this year because they're going to try to keep Darren McFadden as healthy as possible. So with no doubt do I see them, mixing him in there and even getting Goodson a few carries in there as well. Then there's the big question of, will Ryan Williams, this is from Blue Horns, will he take over for Beanie? Now, this is one that it plays a heart because in one of the drafts that we had this weekend, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Mike Wars draft that I actually drafted both those players in, which is the draft we're going to discuss today in a minute. I actually was able to draft Ryan Williams. I drafted him well before Beanie Wells, and Beanie Wells just fell like forever. And I ended up getting Beanie Wells. Let me take a look here. I got Beanie Wells in the 10th round. I got Ryan Williams in the 7th round. You know how I feel about it. I think Ryan Williams is going to, I mean, they have two very good running backs, but Beanie Wells has a history of knee problems. I mean, he's had both knees in terrible shape. Ryan Williams is their new healthy young stud they drafted last season who just, tore the tendon, but I mean, that happens all the time. People come back from that. Who do you see being the opening day starter in Arizona, RC?
It's really a race to the bottom. No, I'm just kidding. I actually like both. I really like both Beanie Wells and Ryan Williams. When they were first drafted, I like Beanie Wells more. I think because he's a big bruising back with actually surprising agility. But the problem with Beanie Wells is that he's just got that those persistent knee problems, and that even though he played through it last year, he really didn't do anything special. Certainly not what he could have done like he looked at in college. So I mean, at this point, and then Ryan Williams in his own right is a pretty good, pretty dynamic running back. We haven't seen him yet, but certainly when he came into the league, that's what was expected of him. I think this is a good theory that it is certainly what's going to happen this year is it's not going to be primarily Beanie Wells, and maybe that's going to be partly because of the ongoing injury issues. Remember, Ryan Williams is coming back from his own issue. He had a serious tendon rupture. So far he looks great. They love him in the Cardinals camp, and there is a school of thought that Ryan Williams will become the primary back this year. So that's not crazy.
I think he will be as well, and I think at first, obviously, I think Wisenhunt's going to want to go with a committee. I mean, when you have two bruising backs, it's great to keep, and especially when you want to keep them both as healthy as possible. I can see him starting off with one of those, situations where it's going to be both guys are going to get, 12 carries a game, however many carries, you're pretty much going to equal it out. But by a certain week, maybe week 3, maybe earlier, maybe week 4, who knows, at some point he's going to go with Ryan Williams. I think one of them is going to burst out. In my opinion, it's going to be Ryan Williams is going to burst out on the scene and say, listen, this is my job. This is my, I'm going to be the tailback for this team, and that's going to be that. But at the beginning, I don't think he's going to have a set guy. Who do I think he's going to start? If he doesn't have a set guy, he'll likely start Beanie Wells. I mean, Beanie Wells has been there longer. He was the starter last year. You can let him start. Like I said, you can go back to the whole Felix Jones, Marion Barber thing where Felix Jones started the game, but the very next set of downs that came in was Marion Barber, and the rest of the game was Marion Barber. He could do something very similar like that, but regardless of who the starter is, they're both going to see plenty of action, and if that offense can get rolling with that running game, it's going to be a fun season for Beanie Wells and Ryan Williams owners, but particularly Ryan Williams. So the short answer, Ryan Williams, but you never know. A question that I had not in the chat room, but one that I got actually is a Facebook question from a friend of mine, Daniel. He wanted to know about, Daniel Thomas. And he wanted to know what did we think of him this year backing up Reggie Bush. Now, I remember last year, RC, he was hurt. He had an injury-plagued rookie season, but he was supposed to be the starter in Miami. Number 1 draft pick, Daniel Thomas. Now, this year, he's virtually being ignored. I mean, Reggie Bush had such a good year. Clearly, he's a starter. But Reggie Bush has got a history of injury. He stayed healthy last year, but he still has that history behind him. And Daniel Thomas is having what I think is a very good preseason. He's had a very good preseason. Matter of fact, he's playing tonight. Let's see what he's doing tonight. Tonight he has 5 rushes for 31 yards. So he's looking good tonight against, obviously not a starting rotation of the Cowboys, who, by the way, are now up 17-6. But he's being the forgotten man. And sometimes I think, we have short-term memories in fantasy sports, and in fantasy football in particular, and we cannot forget how dominating of a running back this is, and he's a free agent in a lot of the leagues that we drafted in, and he's backing up a guy who's injury-prone. Why is he not being drafted, RC? What am I missing that is saying to people, hey, don't draft Daniel Thomas?
Well, it's not – I don't think it's what you get out of Daniel Thomas, he's a big back. I mean, not particularly quick, but the reason why he was thought to be the starter last year because he kind of fits into like a power running style. Of course, now Miami has a whole different coaching staff, so that really throws a wrench into the whole works as to what's going on. But with Daniel Thomas specifically, a lot of what's holding him back evidently is his practice habits and his general attitude, and so far it doesn't look like he's a favorite of the new coaching staff. So he's going to have to really earn what he gets on the merits. He can fit into I think a significant role because Reggie Bush really, despite what happened last season, I think last season was a little bit of a fluke for Bush, and if Daniel Thomas feels like playing, he actually should see significant time. The guy that I like, and this could be wrong because he might turn out to be just one of those running backs who are more of like a track star than a legitimate running back because it doesn't take only straight line speed to be a effective running back. But when you look at like the guy with the best size speed combination in Miami right now, it's Lamar Miller, the guy they got in the 4th round. He's kind of my dark horse, but for now, yeah, the focus should be on Daniel Thomas. If it looks like he's adjusted his attitude, then he could go on to have a significant part in the rotation.
Absolutely. And by the way, they're talking in the chat room about Marcel Reese being the backup, and I don't even understand. Isn't Marcel Reese a fullback? Yeah.
Well, that's why the Oakland situation is not easy to figure out because if you go by the halfback position, it's Tywan Jones clearly. He is the clear backup this year. He took the place of Michael Bush. Marcel Reese was also used very effectively last year, coming out of the backfield as a receiver, but as a fullback role. And that's why if McFadden goes down, you're not really sure what the rotation is going to be. It should mostly be Jones, but you can't count out Reese. But even saying that, though, I don't think Reese is worth drafting. I mean, if you're going to handcuff McFadden, I would take the guy with the most likelihood of actually seeing time, and that should be Jones.
Okay. Can't disagree with you. Obviously, we've already settled that. That was lockdown. I think he's just being a little bit of a smarty pants. But if he really feels that way, go with it. All right, well, we have about 7 minutes left in the show. That was all the questions that I had so far as actual questions. But I wanted to cover really quickly the Mike Ward's draft. And, we don't have a lot of time to cover it as far as, the people that were in it. But this is one of the expert leagues we're probably going to be talking about once in a while throughout the season. It has some great guys in it, obviously, some of the, the guys very well, Dave Garwan, me, you, Greg Kellogg, plenty of other, rotoinfo.com is represented, the Fantasy Daddy Show again. Now, I'm not trying to talk smack, but I did win this league last year, so, I have to kind of try to uphold my title. I got the 5th pick in this one, RC, and I believe you had, which pick did you have in it?
I think maybe the 9th.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to that part of it. You had the 9th pick. Now, with the 5th pick, I want to talk about your first-round picks. I want you to spend a couple of, a good minute and a half talking about that. But I obviously, with the 5th pick, it fell right into place for me, and I got Aaron Rodgers. Stunning. That was, that's pretty much where he's going. So, I would have taken Calvin Johnson, but Garwan took him right before me. But with the 9th pick in this draft, you went a little crazy, a little, and you went with Julio Jones. So I wanted you to talk about, you passed up. Drew Brees fell to the 11th pick in this round, so you passed up. Obviously, I know you're not favorable with taking quarterbacks in the first round, but you passed up a lot of other players that you could have gotten. Why did you go with Julio Jones at the number 9 pick overall?
I didn't think he was going to last even though picking number 9, you picked fairly early in the second round. I didn't think he was going to last. I realized that he has been going, pretty consistently in the second round, but I didn't want to take a quarterback there. The guys left were Tom Brady and Drew Brees. I think they're going too high. The running backs that were available were DeMarco Murray, Maurice Jones-Drew. Jones-Drew, we've discussed, he's very risky. Ryan Matthews is risky. I could have taken him. Adrian Peterson, we discussed him. He's a little bit risky. DeMarco Murray was a possibility, but I just felt like I wanted, to me, the impact player that seems more of a sure thing this year, and that's Julio Jones.
Absolutely. And, Julio Jones has been going neck and neck with A.J. Green. There's like the big question, who's going to have the better year out of these two rookies last year who are now in their sophomore seasons this year? And both of them have, A.J. Green's just a super talented wide receiver. Julio Jones has a great team behind him, and obviously he's heavily talented as well. So they've been going neck and neck in the draft. You managed to come around in the second round and get A.J. Green. So you have two top-flight sophomore receivers who both have the potential to have outstanding seasons. Were you pretty happy with that as an outcome?
Yeah, really, there's the difference between Julio Jones and A.J. Green is Green is known for his great hands, and then Jones is really known for just his blistering speed. I think Jones is a more dangerous receiver. But in any event, they both proved last year that A.J. Green probably more than Jones. Jones had some injury problems, but that they basically broke into the league, and it looked like they were 3-year veterans. So there's no issue with them learning the game. I like Jones' situation a little better because I like Matt Ryan better than Andy Dalton. But Andy Dalton, proved to be, as a rookie quarterback, that was a big accomplishment to do what he did. When you look, I forget what his exact TD to interception ratio was, but it was actually I want to say 20 to 6. Is that crazy? But I'm just making numbers up. So Julio Jones, to me, is the guy that's more explosive. I think has the higher upside, but getting A.J. Green too, I think was a smart move. Because I think this year, certainly the recent trend, and this could reverse in future years, but it used to be where you really had to secure running backs in the first round, otherwise you were doomed. But now, obviously, the evolution has been where there's so many more backfields where there's sharing of carries, and there's, in some cases, like an almost equal split of two legitimate running backs that are going to contribute every week. A great example, one that we're not exactly sure what's going to happen, like the Giants' backfield. It's like Bradshaw and rookie David Wilson. I couldn't guess who's going to have a better season. It could easily be either of those guys. So, and you've got a lot of those situations in the league now.
Oh yeah, and a lot of these questions will be answered, particularly at the beginning of the season, but certainly in just a few weeks into it. There's a lot of questions for running backs, and that's why I agree with you. I tried to steer clear running backs myself. In the second round of this draft, I went with Brandon Marshall. I think he's going to have just a big year in Chicago. He's back with Jay Cutler. Brandon Marshall, doesn't really matter who throws him. He had 83 catches last year with the Dolphins, and their myriad of quarterbacks that they threw at him. So this year, I think he's going to be absolutely outstanding. But, I had the late second-round pick, obviously, coming around there. And, by the way, and just to let you know, in this draft, Dave Garwan went with Maurice Jones-Drew in the second round. So he's obviously gambling that MDG will, just call Maurice Jones-Drew, will come to his senses and at least playing the team sometime before the season starts, because he took him pretty early. All right, well, we're running out of time in the show. It's about to wrap up. I want to thank everybody in the chat room for all the talk. We had a full chat room today, and it looked pretty powerful. It looks like Blue Horns agrees with me on Brandon Marshall. Not a very bad pick. Remember, if you guys are drafting this week, don't be so concerned about running backs in the first couple of rounds. Like me and RC said, they're all over the draft. Any final thoughts, RC?
No, too bad we couldn't get through this. Maybe next week we'll be able to discuss more of our picks. I would have to say you had a really awesome draft, so it looks like you're well on your way to possibly defending your title.
Well, I'd hope so, but I mean, your team always scares me in that draft, and and we'll hopefully next week we'll have a little more time to talk about it. I believe. Is there a game during next week's show? Is there an opening game on Wednesday? The Cowboys and the Giants. Is that actually on Wednesday?
Yeah, it's September 5th. Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, we might have to. Yeah, you're right. It is. So we might have to do Thursday next week.
Yeah, we guys, for the people in podcast land, if that's the case, and I believe it is, we're going to do the Thursday. We'll move our show to Thursday for 1 week just to get around that little bump in the road, because obviously I want to be watching that game. And so we'll do it the following day. And also check out junkyardjake.com. He'll be putting up his bench starts, and so will I over at fantasyfootballtonight.com. Check us out. And don't forget to join up with fantasyfeud.com. Thank you, RC.
All right, thank you, man.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.
Roll, but there's $2,500 of prizes, and they're giving away plenty of them. It's not like it's just all to one place, all to second place, whatever. There's going to be tons of prizes depending on the number of total people that get in there, but there'll be plenty. And in order to get in there, the best way to do it is go to fantasyfootballfetch.com or fantasyfootballtonight.com. Click on one of the Fantasy Feud banners. It's going to take you right to the sign-up page for the free roll, and sign up with the password FREENFL. That's right, free NFL. There's your password. That'll let them know that you're in the crew with me, and you can take on Todd the True Guru Farino. And each week I will announce, I don't think I'm going to announce everybody's going to beat me. I naturally assume not too many will, but I will announce the listeners who do actually beat me, and probably pick on you a little bit. That's what I do best, because I got the mic. And I always say that to prime time when we're at the drafts. I always say prime time, don't talk too much smack in the draft room. Remember, I got the mic. And, by the way, RC, it looks like Primetime's going to be cutting Terrell Owens here pretty quickly. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on?
Nothing much. I'm sure you got plenty of news for us to get to, but today, on today's docket, we were going to kind of try to cover the drafts that we did. And I'm going to let you choose which draft you would like to cover. And basically, I'm not 100% sure how much time we're going to have to cover the whole draft. We never get enough time to cover an entire draft, but maybe we'll just cover our teams and take a look at some of the other surprising picks. But anyways, I was picking on Primetime a little bit.
Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Welcome, everybody, to Fantasy Football Tonight. I'm your host, Todd the True Guru Farino, and I should be joined shortly, of course, by RC Rizza as we get the countdown to the NFL 2012 season. This is pretty much going to be our last show, obviously, before we turn into next week. And then not the last show of the season. This is our last preseason show. As we get into next week, we will be getting into, bench start questions and handling who to start, what's going on. You can't wait to see the final cuts coming up, obviously, sooner than later. There's a few more preseason games still got to go through, obviously, but after those, we're going to see all the final cuts, see what these NFL rosters are going to shape up and look like, and see what I'm sure there's going to be some surprises in that, as there always is. But we're going to be talking about that today. We also had two Mean RC participated in two expert drafts this weekend. This past week on Monday, we were in the Mike Wars League, which, of course, is hosted by Roto Experts, and Dave Garwan over there does a great job of it. Great draft. We'll tell you about some of the participants that were in it. But the Mike Wars League is what it sounds like. It's for podcasters and radio hosts get together and kind of go at it with each other, and so that's Mike Wars. Then, of course, we had the Fantasy Football Fetch Expert League, the sixth year of it, and fifth or sixth year. I believe it's the fifth year. I don't want to tell you fibs. And that was a great draft as well. That's the draft that's hosted by myself, and I haven't won that. He's easy to pick on because he's so nice, but he's also one of the smartest guys. But I think he again is I think you're gambling. I think it's just a simple gamble. It's not like they're taking him that early. I mean, it's a pretty late pick, so who cares at that point? But I think they're taking a little gamble, saying, listen, I'm going to roll the dice, and if Randy Moss all of a sudden, shows this glorified, season that he has, or 6 games or whatever, well, then it pays off. But the way I looked at it is I went and I got, some deep sleeper picks rather than taking a chance on a Randy Moss. I mean, in fact, Randy Moss was drafted before Mario Manningham was drafted. What do you think about that? In every league, he was drafted before Mario Manningham.
Yeah, and once again, it's just simply name recognition. I imagine. I mean, like you're saying, everyone remembers the glory. I mean, you might as well root for the Little River Band to make a comeback, or Eddie Money. It's like, and if you're going to root for a washed-up receiver, it's like compare like say like Marvin Harrison. I mean, because these guys. Moss and Owens, when they're not likable guys to begin with, and not that is the most relevant point, but just stay the freak away from them. It's just that's the moral of the story, and we'll find out why. Well, we already have with Owens, and we'll once the season opens, we'll definitely see why you should have stayed away from him.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's get that's enough talk about Moss and Owens, because it's really, do you remember he took Terrell Owens in 2 drafts, and I think he has to find a home for him now, doesn't he?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering what was going on with that, but, well, who knows? I mean, he could catch on with another, maybe, Canadian team or whatever is going on with him, and he can salvage the season. Obviously, it doesn't look likely, but And the other thing is that there's a lot of people drafting Randy Moss too, and that makes as little sense. For maybe he's not in the same kind of physical shape, maybe a little better, a little worse, but certainly they both fit the category of washed-up receivers that you just don't want to touch in fantasy drafts this year, and especially given Moss's situation where he's just in a very non-prolific offense, where even if he was in very good shape, he probably wasn't going to get thrown to very often. So it's just stay away from those guys.
I don't even understand it. And it's not like it was just prime time taking, in one draft, I think one of our Blog Talk leagues, I believe he took both Moss and Owens. I mean, I think he's trying to, reach a little bit and try to find a little bit of past sparkle, getting two, obviously in their heyday stud wide receivers, and hoping that maybe something magical will happen. But it's not going to happen. But it's not just him. In both of our expert drafts this weekend, Randy Moss was drafted. I think Greg Kellogg drafted him. And Greg Kellogg believes, and he's obviously not only one of the nicer guys in fantasy football. So I don't think I've ever won that league, so I would like to win it once. So I'm going to try this year to win it. Both drafts were just brutal. I have to tell you, both drafts were brutal. I think I did a lot better in the Mike Wars draft than I did in the Fantasy Football Fetch draft. But we'll talk about that, see what you can get away with. And I mean, when you're drafting against people who know what they're doing and know who they want, it's a different story than as opposed to drafting against people who basically look at the top 20 on the ADP and pick out of that. These are the real deal type of drafts. Anyhow, we'll get to that in a second. But first of all, let's get over to fantasyfeud.com. If you guys haven't signed up for the Week 1 NFL free roll, join me and do that. I'm going to be playing in there. They're going to be handing out $2,500 worth of prizes, and this is going to be your opportunity every week. I mean, they have the $2,500 Week 1 free roll. After that, it's going to be different prizes, but they'll always be free, and you can play me, yours truly, Todd the True Guru Farino, and see if you can beat me. And the great thing about FantasyFeud.com is, if you do poorly week 1, just push it aside, throw a splash of water in your face and get ready for week 2. This is not like if you have a bad draft or you take a few injuries and you're kind of done for the season week 3. At FantasyFeud.com, you could play every week. Daily, the daily contest. They say daily, but what they really mean is weekly, because obviously football is not daily. But basically, you can go in there each week, to pick a lineup out of their system and roll with it and see if you can beat the other participants. Now, there's going to be hundreds of participants in this free